Mohammad Reza Farzanegan is a professor of Middle East economics at Marburg University in Germany. He joins us now from Marburg. Good to have you with us. So, first of all, the fact that we've now heard the US president say he's cancelled the trip of his representatives going to Pakistan, does this mean that this standoff in the Strait of Hormuz and its economic impact on the world as well as Iran will likely drag on for a while? Is that the sort of economic forecast you see?
Well, apparently, this would be the natural scenario that we could expect in reaction to lack of willingness of the U.S. administration to initiate and continue a serious negotiation with Iran. So Iran would keep its control on the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, there would be a selective control in a way that the friendly countries could still pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and the others who are basically the allies of the United States would have more difficulties and disruption in these terms. So,
sorry, but Professor, but that's not what Iran has announced, of course. Iran has announced, the latest announcement we had about a week ago from the IRGC was a complete halt and ending to shipping going through the Strait of Hormuz after the US announced its naval blockade, right? So from the Iranian position now is no longer that there will be a process or a mechanism for passage of ships. It's that there will not be any shipping whatsoever as long as Iran can't conduct shipping.
Well, this is the announcement, of course, but de facto, I mean, as you probably also know, and you reported that the Chinese importers are very much dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. 50% of the China oil come from the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and basically a complete disruption means the big economic damages also on the Chinese economy. So in that sense, de facto, we expect that although the announcement of Khatam al-Anbiya Revolutionary Guard is that there would be a full blockage of the Strait of Hormuz in reaction to United States President's statement, but we would see in practice that there would be still some possibility to pass through the Strait of Hormuz for strategic partners of Iran, namely Russia and China, because Iran basically very much reliant on these support of these two countries in international assemblies, and for that reason, I would expect that this possibility would be still open for these two countries and a few more. That is probably the likely scenario that we will be observing in the forthcoming days and the weeks.
Okay, I guess then it's kind of a race of who will reach the point of unbearable pain first. Can Iran prevail in that sort of standoff when we're seeing more sanctions as well as the US blockade, and we're seeing the seizure of Iranian oil tankers, right?
Yes, that's of course a very specific situation. This US blockade on the shippings to Iranian ports and from Iranian ports. And that has been also stimulated and facilitated by UN sanction reactivated last September, which make it possible for these type of controls on the sea for the commercial goods which goes to Iran and leave the Iranian ports. So this is a new serious puzzling situation for Iranian authorities. And the reaction would be basically if the US insists on enforcement of these blockade of Iranian ports, which is a very serious economic consequences for Iran, because 90% of Iranian import and export goes through the southern ports, and 70% of its non-oil trade also works through the southern ports. So it would be a very substantial pressure for Iranian macroeconomy in the forthcoming weeks and months. So Iran would probably try to increase the cost for the other exporters for the Strait of Hormuz, other Arab countries, and that would be creating a substantial cost on the global supply of products and oil prices. So in a way, that would be a kind of destructive competition between Iran and United States with respect to this strait. And as you correctly mentioned, who would first reach that threshold level in a way to give up?
How would that impact? How would that impact Iran's standing in the world if it then, as you said, even goes after other countries, Arab countries in the region, and tries to stop them from importing and exporting. That doesn't sit well with international law, does it?
Well, in the short term, of course, this is something that up to now we see it was working, it was functioning. I mean, it was recognized by or tolerated by the Iran key allies, namely Russia and China, up to the current time, right? Because as I said, de facto Iran is basically letting the shipments toward these countries go through the Strait of Hormuz in order to reduce pressure and demand from their side on Iran. But in the middle term, the long term, of course, the more longer these disruptions continue from the Iranian side, there would be more international pressure on Iran to open it
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Mohammad Reza Farzanegan, Middle East economics professor at Marburg University, joining us from Marburg in Germany.
Thanks.